For a good chunk of my teenage years, I really fell out of love with reading. As a kid, I read a lot and then I started reading less and less until I stopped reading completely. And really, I only started reading again in 2020. And now it's become a bit of an obsession. So this is for those that want to rekindle that passion for stories. Here is a list of 10 ways to fall back in love with reading. Schedule the time and fit it into your day. Whether it's in the morning or a lunch break at work or at night in the evenings, scheduling in the time to fit in your reading is a good way for it to not fall to the wayside. We schedule so many important things in our life to do with working and groceries and regular to-do jobs. However, it's important to leave time for the things you really enjoy doing or want to do more of. So just carving out this little half hour or hour a day is a great way to start reading it again and making sure that it is a priority for you. However, scheduling doesn't work for everybody. Some people don't like setting a set time of I'm going to read at this point because perhaps their day's very variable. But even if scheduling isn't your thing, finding ways to naturally fit reading into your normal routine is a great way for it to just become something that you do. Whether that's reading while commuting, reading while you're waiting for a partner to get home from work, if you have some downtime, or even sticking on an audiobook every time you go to the gym, allows reading just to become part of your daily routine. I personally love reading to audiobooks when I'm traveling for work, or I like to sneak in a chapter while I'm waiting for a video to edit. I mean, the computer's busy. I can't do anything else on the computer while it's rendering, so I might as well sneak in a chapter or 2, or 3, or 4. Or 5. Set goals or completely scrap your goals. This is completely dependent on the individual. Some people really like setting goals and being able to sort of gamify the process of reading, whether that is reading a number of books in a year or a number of pages you want to read in a given day, or perhaps even just reading a book a month or every 2 months. It doesn't necessarily matter what the goal is, but just having some sort of goal is a great way to keep you on track with reading. Part of my honors project at university was this idea of gamifying exercise, and there's loads of studies that say that gamifying something by making it more fun or adding some goals is a great way to keep us consistent and engaged in a given task. On the other end of the spectrum completely, if you're already setting big goals or you're very structured in your reading and perhaps you're feeling a little burnt out because of it, scrap it. You don't need to read 100 books a year. In my eyes, one great book completely outweighs 100 mediocre books. For some people, setting these goals just creates an unnecessary stress and pressure to keep up with certain milestones that you set for yourself. And reading should be fun. It shouldn't be something that you have to do. I personally set a really low goal that I'm able to complete fairly easily. That way I can still see my progress towards it, and I can see that every time I finish a book, I'm getting closer to it, which makes me want to keep reading. But I don't feel this added pressure of having to keep up reading just to hit this arbitrary goal that I set myself. In the past, when I set myself really high goals, it didn't personally work for me because it started to affect what I was reading. I didn't want to pick up the big chunky fantasy book because I was worried about how long it would take me to read. And as someone who likes really long books, doesn't really work for me. I don't want it to affect what I'm reading. DNF, or did not finish. If you picked up a book and you're reading it and it's just not working for you, you don't need to finish that book. There is this idea that you need to finish every book that you start, and I'm personally really bad for this. I think it stems from this idea of leaving something unfinished. Like, most people wouldn't start a film and not finish it. However, they would definitely watch a couple of episodes of a TV show and decide it's not for them. And seeing as a TV show is a lot longer a period of time, it could be 10 plus hours. And reading is exactly the same. It's not the same as watching a movie. So if one isn't working for you, you don't need to finish it. And the other thing is, you don't necessarily have to be done with that book forever. It perhaps just isn't working for you right now. I've done this a couple times. One of those times was with Nevernight. I started reading it and it just wasn't what I was feeling at that time. The prose style is very poetic and metaphorical, and it just wasn't what I was in the mood for at that time. So I put it down and I came back to it, I think 2 years later, so a good chunk of time, and I loved it so much when I read it the second time round. But if I'd forced that first read, then I probably would not have enjoyed this book. But the fact that I gave it the time, went back to it when it was something that I was in the mood for, it worked really well for me. Equally, it can be forever. If a book just isn't for you, it just isn't for you. In a world where there are more books than there is time to read, there's no point in wasting time reading a book that you aren't enjoying. Try a different format. Mixing up how you consume a story is a great way to bring this level of fresh and newness to the experience. Be that if you are used to reading physical books, then maybe try an ebook or listen to an audiobook, or vice versa, or even a combination of all of those. I really enjoy all three formats. I think they all have their own pros and cons, and even some books work better in different formats. For example, I am currently reading Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is a really fun book, but the audiobook just adds a new layer of immersion that you wouldn't get from reading it physically, in my opinion. This also ties nicely to my previous point about fitting it into your day, because what format works for you perhaps changes throughout the day. If you spend a lot of time out and about, you might not want to carry about physical copies or a big chunky hardback. You might want to carry about your e-reader or even listen to an audiobook on your phone. I love listening to audiobooks on the bus because I get motion sickness while reading on the bus. However, when I get home, I love having a physical copy in front of me. Immerse yourself in the community. I always get so amped up hearing people talk really passionately about something that they love. I've done this with video games, I've done this with writing, and I've done this with reading. Just by watching people talk about games or books or writing, and just talking about how much they enjoyed something just makes me want to be a part of that. And there is certainly no shortage of channels for any type of book that you like to read. There will be people making videos on it and talking very excitedly about what they loved. But likewise, tuning into the community on other platforms like Instagram, Twitter, Discord, where readers can put together and chat about what they're reading, what they're excited to read, is a great way to reignite that love for reading. Before I created this channel, I created an Instagram page for the sole reason of interacting with other readers. In real life, I know very few people who read the same types of books as I do, and I found it a really good way to interact with people who have very similar tastes as you, or even to broaden your tastes into new parts of the genre that you perhaps didn't know about. And I've made some amazing friends and sworn enemies that I get to chat about books with. Don't compare your reading to others. It's very easy to come online and see that some of these reviewers are reading over 100 books a year. However, I refer to my earlier comment about one great book completely outweighs 100 mediocre books. We read to have fun, explore new worlds, relate to characters, and just go out on a journey. While it can be fun to see how many books that you can read in a given month or a week or a year and just sort of keep up the pace with reading these books, sometimes it's even more rewarding to just really settle into a really long book or a really long series and just spend time with these characters and in these worlds. In the end, it isn't important how many books you read. It only takes one book that truly resonates with you that can change you as a person. Join a book club or do a buddy read. With the internet and social media, it's really easy to find a group of people who are into the same books as you, a lot of which are already in established book clubs that do monthly or bi-monthly reads, or even just recruit one friend and do a buddy read of a book that you both want to read. If you know that others are reading the book, it will implore you to make the time to just squeeze in an extra chapter or two so you can keep up with the discussions. And the excitement in the community feel of all reading the same book is such a fun experience. Just being able to discuss the scenes and what's going on with some of the chapters, or even hearing someone say, "Did you read chapter 24? You need to read chapter 24. It's going to hype you up and get you excited to keep reading this book. Whether you're enjoying it or disliking it, it can be an equally fun experience, and getting to see why others feel the same or perhaps differently, and just opening up this story from other perspectives and seeing how other people interpret this story. I do in fact run my own book club in a Discord, which you can join for free in the description below. In December, we will be reading Sword of Kaigen, which is an Asian-inspired fantasy book, so if that seems like something that you're interested in, hop over to the Discord in the comments below. You can join the monthly book club. Change where or when you're reading. Sometimes just changing up small things around your reading is enough to make it feel fresh and new. If you always read in bed, try reading on the couch. Or if you're feeling real spicy, you can go out and read in a coffee shop. Equally, mixing up the time as well as the location can just make it feel really new. So if you're used to reading in the mornings before work, try reading just before going to bed at night, or vice versa. Just like anything, it can start to feel stagnant. So mixing up some of these environmental elements is a great way to make it feel fresh and new again. Especially if you're feeling burnt out on reading, you can start to associate some of these environmental elements with just not enjoying reading. So this is a great way to just kind of reset your perspective, change what you're reading. Now this is probably the most important point on this list. It is so easy to read what you know and what you've loved in the past, but reading is such a huge variety of books. When I got back into reading, I just defaulted to what I knew. I immediately jumped into Rick Riordan's new series at the time, because it's what I read when I was younger and I knew that I would enjoy it and I knew what to expect. However, it didn't work for me as well as I had hoped. But then I decided to try something completely different. Everybody was talking about this author, Brando Sando or something like that. And I read The Final Empire, the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, and that is how I really fell back in love with reading. It really opened my eyes to what fantasy could be. Now, as you can see, it's kind of gone out of hand, and Brandon Sanderson's to blame. There really is a book for everything. You want to read about a socially anxious robot? I got you. You want to read a book about the human race being enslaved and put on an alien TV show? There's a book for that. Try a different genre, try a different subgenre of a genre you already like, just try a different style of book. The amount of creativity and unique ideas out there truly is endless. It could be that your all-time favourite book is just outside the realm of what you know. And if you're a fantasy reader and don't know what to read, I have a ton of recommendation videos on my channel, including one for beginners, so if you just want to get into adult fantasy, this is definitely a good place to start. I want to say a huge thank you to my patrons who are keeping this channel alive. Your support really means the world to me. Thank you very much for watching. Outro.